There are some concerns over the implications of AI on bias and diversity. And we know that bias in race and gender predate AI. So give us your perspective on that, as well as what's happening with AI and how it's impacting it.
Yeah, I mean it's a tough pill to swallow when you already are sort of the checkbox that doesn't make it onto the census list, you know? Like I'm a hybrid French Moroccan American, grew up in Morocco, um, have been in many ways a kind of third culture kid in all of the worlds that I've navigated and work. And so I've been thinking about how to make sure that people like me that might either be that checkbox or not even make it on the list because they're a particular kind of niche within even the United States or in whatever world that they're in that doesn't really make it into the majority of the materials, let's say, that go into training data. I have always been thinking about how can I show up and be a representative of a small group of people that might not be represented in any other way. And so with AI, something that is so important to keep in mind is that these training data sets are these large language models, let's say, are trained on a lot of data that doesn't include certain groups of people. And so, one of the things that I've had amazing conversations through the documentary I started working on with the New Yorker, but we didn't end up finishing, was about how can we start to think about training these data sets with the knowledge of different kinds of people that exist and perspectives of different people that exist. So, someone who's doing a lot of work on this is Michael Runningwolf. Um, he is talking about basically training smaller language models that are taking into consideration indigenous native languages. And so, how can you have someone from a particular tribe be able to communicate with a large language model so that his language isn't lost because he's not speaking it with his grandmother because he's on TikTok all the time? But how can you create these virtual environments where an AI can actually take the place of someone who's a tutor of that language so these languages aren't lost? And there's all these other kinds of examples in the world of trying to think about AI as not just something that will continue to perpetuate bias, which it does. And we have seen so many different examples of that, from policing to now seeing how ChatGPT, what do they call it? Like sort of the bots that try to find ChatGPT AI writing, they're biased against folks that are second language, sort of English as a second language. And so talk about the challenges that someone who is speaking English as a second language and applying to jobs, and someone uses an AI sort of AI tracker to see if someone has written their essay in or their reference letter with AI and sees that, oh, unfortunately, this one has written it with AI when in fact it was someone who was just not practiced at English. Like it just, there's so many implications for a lack of consideration for people that are not the majority. And so I think it's so important when we're thinking about AI to think about all of the different groups of people that are not represented, both in the models, but also who being, might be unfairly disadvantaged in using these different models because it's just not tracking the right metrics. And so I personally think it's one of the most important places that we need to be focusing our energy on because there's real human implications. And so I know that there's a lot of people working in the field, and I think it's one of the most beautiful things to hear people speaking at conferences about how much they are taking into consideration as they create new training models for AI, really going to diverse communities and trying to make it a priority to talk to people that are not part of the dominant narrative and bring those weights and those models to the forefront. And talking to people who are programming with folks that are like indigenous folks who are actually creating code that represents their culture rather than something that is never considered them. So there's a lot of really amazing work being done and also a very long way to go.